And we're live! Woohoo! Welcome to the first ever Quintessential Comics live book club broadcast. It's a thing. I'm Alice Quinn. This is Quintessential Comics. We talk about comics and stuff. This is the book club because talking about comics with other people is super cool. I'm switching it up a bit with this format. Instead of doing two graphic novels, I'm doing one graphic novel on one newly released issue. The reason being is that over the past year I've realized how important it is to support comics while they are in issue format. One of my favorite comics of the past year, She-Hulk, is not being continued as a continuing series because they're like, yo, nobody's buying this in issues. I'm like, wait, I'm totally buying it, I swear. But I'm not enough. So it's important to read new issues. So give them a shot. So today we're reading Snow by Benjamin Rivers and Squirrel Girl by Ryan North, Erica Henderson, and super cool people at Marvel. Today I'm joined by Andrew Ace. Let me say hi.
Hi.
And Chris Howard. How you doing?
No, 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 yes, no, yes.
Yep.
No. They just see you.
So, Alice, do you want to guide us into chatting about our books this week?
I liked them. I generally enjoyed them. I can get more critical, and I will. But, overall, I enjoyed myself. How about you, Ace?
I like them both. I think that they have very different sort of markets that they're aiming themselves at. But I think they're nicely joined by having, and when I say non-mainstream art, maybe it's not fair these days, but it's maybe not Marvel action-style art in them, which I think is fun. We're seeing new comics coming out for new people.
And Chris, what did you think? Or Snow? We're starting with Snow.
Starting with Snow, or just sort of overall opinions?
Overall opinions, and then we'll start with Snow.
They're both enjoyable. Snow I had read years ago, and Squirrel Girl didn't know a whole lot, but it was amusing.
Yeah, so I'll start. One of the reasons I picked Snow is I have a bunch of physical comics I own, like some of them behind me, that I haven't been reading because I got an e-reader and it's so much easier to take with me everywhere. And I was like, man, I hear this comic is awesome, and it's short, and I only gave you guys 2 weeks notice for this book club, so I was like, oh, I'll pick something short. Snow, it's winter. And I'm generally a fan of Toronto-based comics, and I've been hearing it's really good, and they did an animated game and I think a movie, or at least they were optioning it for a movie, so that was super cool, and I was like, I'll check it out, and I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I was sort of expecting it to be more. It was very everything in it was really simplified in a sense. It was really obvious what the themes were and what was going on, and even the characters themselves are drawn really simply, and I feel like it was done for a reason, but at the same time, I don't know, it could have been done.
Well, it looks like you've got the same one I've got that's got the little bit of ephemera at the back, and his earlier sort of thinking about stylistic was a little more complex, a little more detailed. You simplify a character down, it's easier to identify with them. Maybe that's the reason for it. Or, I mean, it sounds like it was a labor of love over a long period of time, but at times he was rushing through it. In a simpler style, it may have just been easier to produce.
I would also say, I mean, I actually I like the art. I agree with Alice, I think, about the story or the plotting. But when it comes to the characters, one thing I noticed, so I used to work in a comic book store for a number of years, was though the difference between, say, a Superman, Batman, any superhero comic book where you had the main character in a pretty obvious, one might say garish outfit, but any new reader could immediately identify with who is who in the story. And then, as I started reading more Vertigo, kind of breaking outside of Marvel or DC straight-up superhero comics, one of my favorite series was 100 Bullets, and I love it. But if you're not reading that in the graphic novel format, where you're flying through issues, and instead going month to month, there's like 11 guys who are all wearing gray suits with kind of more or less the same haircut, and it's it's a great story. I'm not knocking 100 Bullets in the slightest. But when it came to me trying to figure out who was who each issue in the issue format, I had a hard time, and I was a big fan of the series. So I think a bit of what's going on in Snow is that Benjamin is making each character immediately recognizable for who they are, and so I saw the art lending itself or headed in that direction. But I also know labor of love and trying to get through something, the amount of time involved to illustrate a comic book, and there might I didn't ask him when I met him a few years ago, but there might have been a bit of like what gets this comic done versus what's the Sistine Chapel.
And there's nothing wrong with simplified character design. I didn't mean that in any sense, but there's few characters, and there isn't like a ton of there's just one, pretty much. I guess there's two storylines. There's a storyline of how she gets involved with this murder case and how she doesn't like how everything on Queen Street is changing, and the shop she works in is closing down. Spoilers for people who haven't read books yet. These are what we're talking about in the book club.
I mean, I would say that Snow is very much aimed at Torontonians. You could maybe make a bit of a case for displacing that towards maybe, say, hipsters, but I don't want to stereotype and group too much. But when I say for Torontonians, I mean it is very much set using Toronto landmarks. The whole theme, as Alice was just saying, of the changes in Queen Street West. And I know that I grew up hanging out there, going to the old Snail, but also like checking out the head shops and the heavy metal clothing stores and stuff. This is the late '90s, and I went down a couple years ago, and it's HMV stores and major chain clothing stores, and I think that was sort of that storyline is in trying to draw in any Torontonian who had grown up exploring downtown. But I think you're right in one sense, Alice, about that. It's very obvious you can see where the plot is going. And it's almost more that you're just kind of going along trying to like, oh, I know that location, and oh, I've been to that coffee shop, or what's in the background of that panel. So I enjoyed it for that, for sure.
Yeah, I can see an appeal, for the Toronto set, but also anybody who lives in a major urban center and has that love for their local hangouts, whatever their equivalent is. I am sure there's all sorts of neighborhoods in places all across North America that have experienced exactly this same shift. And I mean, the specific ones happening here, sure. I miss Pages. I miss back a lot of the the neat things that were along Queen West. But neighborhoods change. It happens. What do you do? I can't remember where this falls, sort of timeline in production and its relation to something like Scott Pilgrim. But I'm sure there's an overlap in the audience there. Again, that sort of comics about a certain place and a time, and it's as much about that as it is about whatever the narrative is actually about.
I think it's pretty relatable for people who live in other metropolitan cities and just in general. The society we live in today, everything changes so fast. I mean, there's a new phone out every 6 months, and it's not like when color TVs came out. So change is definitely a really big theme in this book.
Well, I think that change in Toronto, is symbolic of the character, and then that is to say maybe early 20-somethings, and the changes that you're going through in your life, where you've maybe grown up, or the things that you're used to are changing, or you've moved somewhere and identified with it maybe for a couple of years, and now it's being changed, like downtown core. I think the story in a way has that subtext of growing up and the changes that we face.
It's really cool in a way to see the character go from like really being scared of change and just like pretty much running away from it. You see her in the first couple scenes like rushing back to her apartment, trying not to look at all the closed and for sale and for lease signs, to the end of the book where she's actually trying to embrace it and do something new of her own. And that progression I really enjoyed, because I'm an extrovert, so watching people like Dana, who are clearly introverts, who are so comfortable, watching them like conquer that and just sort of get out of their shell, was really enjoyable. I really did it. Do you guys have like a ton more to say about Snow? We could move to Squirrel Girl if you guys have.
I was about to suggest that.
The only other thing I wanted to say about Snow that I was really always impressed by, not so much the content of the book, but Ben himself. And you mentioned it a little briefly. My copy, I've got a little sketch from him in the front, and I've also got a URL. And the URL takes you to where you can get a downloadable version. And you go to his website for the comic, and there's the game, the multiple, downloadable versions. There is a movie, and it looks like it's a full film that's been made, and you can get it off the website. This guy really did it all, and did it early in terms of sort of the multiple formats and self-publishing, and for nothing else. This is a key book to look up to. Just wow, look what he did and look how well he did that aspect. So that's just one of the things that when you mentioned that was going to be one of those, like, oh, that guy, yeah. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really dug is like in the back of the book he talks about these characters really came alive in my head, and reading it, even though the plot line and the characters are simple, they really speak volumes. And they like I have a friend who always asks me to go out to drink with them, and like even though I'm like not into it at the time, like it's so good to have that, and like I can totally relate. So yeah, like I really dug how he can take this comic and make it into a movie and make it into a video game, and it's just indie and he does it all himself, and that's props, props. Okay, cool. We'll talk a bit about Squirrel Girl, and then if you guys remember anything you else wanted to mention about Snow, we can go back to it. Squirrel Girl, I really liked it. So the story of this is like Squirrel Girl has been a character within the Marvel Universe that has been mentioned here or there and has had appearances here and there throughout comics and Marvel since like I think 60s. I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And so this is the first time that she's got a solo comic, and it's called The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which I really dig because of the way she beats her enemies. Who wants to start?
I'll go. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
I rather liked, actually, how the story ended. And that the story, while there was obviously some action and some fighting, the resolution came about through a non-combative means. She basically outthinks, her opponent outthinks the problem and solves it that way. I was also really blown away by the colorist, Rico Renzi. I maybe not pronouncing that correctly, but I really found the color palette drew me in. I was mentioning before the art by Erica Henderson, and then it was sort of superhero, big muscles. It had a more kind of cartoony feel to it, And I don't know if that really appealed to me personally, but art's a very subjective thing, and I would say that I'm probably not quite the target audience for this comic book. But at the same time, reading it, I really loved, how she's sort of narrating, but also got the little playing cards that like give information, and then just that the ending came about through a much more imaginative, interesting way than just I punched him harder than he punched me. So I really liked it and would recommend it to anyone who wants to read a good comic book.
I had come across the character once or twice from other stuff I've read. I think at some point she was Luke Cage's the nanny for his kid or something, but really didn't know a whole lot about her. Sort of heard about it coming. Actually had a bit of a challenge digging a copy up. I had to go to a store I would not normally frequent to sort of actually suss out one. So I mean, they've done well on it in terms of sales, obviously. And I heard a lot of sellouts. It doesn't strike me as something that's going to run for 500 issues. It's taking something that's had this bubbling under fan interest and sort of going, okay, let's give them their own book. And it 5, 6, 10, we'll see how it does. But I don't see it as a long-term thing. But hey, great. Let's you were talking about She-Hulk. We keep trying to give She-Hulk her own book, and there's definitely people who like it. I had read one of the previous runs of She-Hulk, and yeah, it was enjoyable for a while. But maybe that's just it. That except for the big main players, we just have to accept that these kinds of characters are going to get smaller runs, and do what you want with them, and then accept that that's going to be it. For what it is, it's a lot of fun.
Nice. I'm just gonna interject there. Yeah, I think a lot of the problems with the comic book industry, I love the comic book industry, but there are problems, comes from the fact that people expect there to be 500 issues, and that ongoing means ongoing forever, which isn't the case, because it's just not going to happen. I mean, She-Hulk had 2 solid volumes, and that's just going to be it. It could have continued. It had, the potential to, but it's not people out there reading it. They're not going to be. So I really liked how this issue is mostly self-contained. It's set up for a really good story. It had a lot of fun parts to it. And it knows. It's like, even though, Squirrel Girl likes to think of herself hanging out with the Avengers, like, she's a C or D list character who, is mostly going to be hanging out at college and getting a, education something other than squirrels. So I like that. It embraces that, and I like that with the art, it's not like, okay, this is, your typical Marvel superhero art, because this isn't your typical Marvel superhero. This is more of your hipster alternative, sorry to label, type comic. I know, I hate labeling things, because none of the labels, nobody feels like they fit into any label. I'm just going to rant that there for a second.
Well, but it's... If I look for comparators, the new or the most recent incarnation of Batgirl, we've sort of thrown her into a school and actually trying to acknowledge that she's supposed to be young in this particular incarnation. So let's embrace the young. Let's embrace the youth culture. She rides the subway. She goes to school. This seems to be a little bit of, okay, let's see if we can match that with something from Marvel. And great, because now we've got a different product coming out of Marvel than all the other stuff that all fits into a particular mold. If these 2 big companies want to sort of expand and sort of try some different types of storytelling, I guess the Hawkeye book that's been out right now, that's been great, again, has a different feel than the rest of the guys in tights hitting each other stuff. It takes itself a little less seriously. The art's a little simpler, that clean line, and it has a little bit of fun and tries something different with the character. So, great. Is this something I'm going to follow? admittedly, probably not. She's not a character that I have a great undying love for, and was going, yes, we need a Squirrel Girl book. But I can certainly see the appeal because I'm a huge fan of Ambush Bug, and it's that same wacky on the sidelines character who self-narrates. Like, this could easily be a Giffen book in its sort of approach. It's just maybe not for me, but you know what? If the library, if they put a 6-volume collection together and the library gets it, I'll read it. And certainly if I knew the right people, it would be something I'd recommend. And the other thing I just want to throw in here, one of the things I love is Squirrel Girl is not a size 6.
Yeah.
I love that. That's just fabulous. I've seen different renditions of her. I think there was an alternate cover with Art Adams, and I'd be willing to bet she was a little more svelte in his rendition. But the fact that the main book, yeah, she's not this little standard character. Yay!
I like how she actually talks about fitting her tail into her pants.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, now I just have a big rounded ass. It's nice, and it's just like, yes.
And it's not just pants. She's wearing like leggings. That's impressive.
Well, and I think, though, what we're talking about here, though, this book is aimed at potentially newer readers. I would say probably female readers, but certainly younger readers as well. And we're sort of throwing around She-Hulk, but I would say that, I mean, She-Hulk, I don't know when she was created, if she was really trying to draw in more female readers, or I hate to say it, is more of a male fantasy. But what made her really exciting, and I won't lie, I haven't read the latest run. I'm a more John Byrne fan, at least aware of his work. But was that the humor he brought to the title, the breaking of the fourth wall, that ambush bug kind of wackiness that crept in the book that then made it stand out on its own. Squirrel Girl, the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, has some of that, but I think is genuinely trying to be aimed at younger readers, and B, female readers with positive, I want to say positive reinforcement's quite the right word. I'm probably not thinking of it, but exactly what Alice is talking about when she tucks her tail into her pants, she comments on her bum. When she's another scene I really liked was when she meets the guy and she drops all the boxes and the squirrel's like, would Squirrel Girl pretend to need help or whatever, he basically gives her a little like kind of, who are you really reality check, and she's like, yeah, you know what, I'm a strong independent person. She picks up the boxes and walks off. And in that regard, I really liked that this was a character who, if there was a 10-year-old reader or something, you could put this in their hands, and it's not, another female character with half her chest bared, in her, bikini thong kind of thing, fighting giant monsters with more punches and more punches. So yeah, I thought it was a really good book in that regard. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Ryan North, the writer, A, Canadian, and B, he wrote Machine of Death and This Is How You Die. Two fantastic sort of collections of short stories, I should say, but books that you should check out. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Another thing about Ryan North is he writes the Adventure Time comics, and originally when I read them, I was like, oh, this little green text at the bottom, that's an Adventure Time thing, but it's in the Squirrel Girl book. If you guys didn't see it, at the bottom of each page, tiny green text is Ryan North talking to us. It's hilarious. Where he comments on what's happening in that page, and he's like, I like how he comments on the Squirrel Girl theme song, and he's like, congratulations, you all have that 50s Spider-Man theme song in your head right now, and it's like, I do! How did you know? So I really liked that, and that I never knew that was like a specific Ryan North thing. I thought that was like an Adventure Time thing, but I think it's pretty cool how we can do that there too. I don't know, did you guys see that?
Sorry, Chris?
Oh, I saw it. I managed to squint through one or two of them and went, oh no, I can't. I'm either going to have to like switch to glasses or get a really strong light. I was trying to sit there going, oh god. Could you not have chosen a slightly darker color or something?
I actually missed it. And maybe sort of commenting on, sorry, I have a visitor here, commenting on the perils of downloadable comics, because they don't always size properly to my iPad or my phone. So I got a digital copy of this and completely missed that detail. And I do usually prefer to have a hard copy to, I don't know, I'm old school that way. I like to feel something when I'm reading it. But you mentioned earlier about your, was it a electronic e-reader? So I've been using my iPad, my phone to a lesser extent, to be reading digital comics and being able to carry 200 issues. A number of flights I've taken and tried to pack like 30 pounds of graphic novels because I get sort of plane sick and comics help. And I'm just like, oh wow, now I can take my iPad. Like my life has completely changed. So.
Yeah, if only digital comics were like affordable. Because I get discounts at my local comic shop. It just makes more sense to buy physical issues, but I don't have the space for that. That's a discussion for another day, and we'll shelve that for the next book club or whatever we do. But yeah, I really dug Squirrel Girl. We haven't really talked too much about the fight scene, so I do want to touch up on that. So she meets up with Craven, the hunter, and he's like, I'm a hunter! I hunt the most deadliest game! And, you know, she's trying to fight him traditional styles, and it's not super working. So she takes this, like, unconventional route of, like, talking to him and being like, hey, since, you know, you died and come back, what is really the most deadly and dangerous game? Have you reevaluated your life goals? And it's like, what? Yes, Squirrel Girl. What did you guys think about that?
I liked it. Like I was saying before, it showed a character who's using brains over brawn, really, I guess, at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah, lots of fun. And I mean, I love the Deadpool collector cards, so you can, know who you're up against. And, Craven was always a bit of an odd, really, how much of this can you actually do? Haven't you killed everything you want to kill? It's just... he seemed a bit of an odd villain anyway, and yeah, about that vest, really.
Yeah. I thought he was dead, which I think one of the cards said, and I was just like, yeah, but it's perfect. So at this point, they're kind of, the fourth wall, poking fun at how often characters die, but then come back, to the point that, like, these days in comic books, you'll see characters be like, oh, yeah, they think, they went off the cliff, but we're not going to think they're dead in the slightest.
Yeah, like that last episode of Arrow. You knew he wasn't dead anyway. But yeah, what I really liked about this issue is there's just so much to it. And it really sets up a lot. She's talking to squirrels, but she's also trying to be a normal girl, going to college, trying to expand her territory, her boundaries and try new things. She's got that first awkward boy encounter, which, I mean, we can all sort of relate to in a way. So yeah, and at the end it sets up for the next issue and the next apocalyptic event. So that'll be super cool, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how she deals with the issue of galactic proportions.
Well, actually, but I'm wondering if we will actually even see Galactus in the next issue. Again, coming back to Ambush Bug, I just remembered one of his little 4-issue series or whatever. Each issue ended with, like a big splash page, and you turn, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to go back to my house, and whoa, Darkseid! And of course, the next issue has nothing to do with that, and you get to the very end, and he goes to the laundromat, Darkseid! Ah! So it's a fake out every time. It's like, I could see them doing that.
I gotta agree with Chris there. That was my impression, especially just when I was looking at the letters column. They've got the cover for the next issue. Obviously, I mean, I don't know. Though, did you guys read your way through the letters column? That was some pretty funny stuff. I was just sort of like, whoa, first issue they already got letters, and I'm like reading, and I'm like, oh, this is like, they're having some good fun with us. I liked it.
Well, I liked one of the letters, Chip Z. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We know who that is.
For me, the letters column is always like the second read through. I like reading my comics a bunch, and so like for that, it's just like, do I have the patience? If I'm sitting there in the dentist office waiting to get in, I'm like dreading it. I'll read the entirety of the letters column, but most of the times I'm just like, eh. Is that like a? I guess it's more of a classics comics thing, because I started reading comics through a lot of graphic novels, so having that extra bit at the end wasn't as enticing for me because I was used to having just like more story.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess
80s. Sorry, Chris, what were you about to say?
Yeah, if you grew up with, you know, and I mean, there is a the insult that made a man out of Mac. I'm going through this Charles Atlas ad, looking at it, and like, okay, this has got to be part of the comic.
Oh yeah,
It's an actual Atlas ad. I couldn't believe it, but it's a part of the comic reading experience, like the letters page. You know, you'd have those ads, and nowadays, you know, you flip the rest of this. The rest of the ads in here are house ads. They're all just for Marvel stuff. The idea of selling advertising space in comic books is, you know, largely gone a long time ago. But there's an Atlas ad. I'm like, ah!
And one of the things, actually, Alice, that you mentioned before about supporting single issues and the importance of that, and I definitely hear you. I mean, Fables, fantastic series. When I was working at a comic book store, we maybe sell 6 or 7 single issues. We get the latest graphic novel, and we'd order 20 at a time, and we'd order another 20 almost immediately. And myself these days, you're talking about, you know, buying the issues, reading them at lunch. I've moved to only really buying graphic novels, just because boxes and boxes and boxes of comics, you know, you lose room where to put them. And I like having, you know, the books, pull them off the shelf, and to read them in that format. But it does mean that if a comic book comes out, and especially for those first 5 or 6 issues, should we continue it, make it more of an ongoing series? Should we even collect as a graphic novel? If I'm not buying the issues, so I'm, say, waiting for the trade paperback, the company doesn't know that. And so, you know, it does imperil smaller run titles, because, you know, obviously they're going to make a Batman graphic novel.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really wanted to do an issue, and I want to continue doing one graphic novel in one issue. And one of the things I actually want to discuss is, like, would you continue to buy this in issues, or would you wait for the graphic novel? Chris, you said you probably weren't super interested. If you saw it in the library, you would pick it up.
Yeah.
But Ace, would you continue picking this up in issues, or would you wait for a graphic novel?
Well, I mean, like, I'd pick it up in digital issues, for sure. But I don't know if I'm. Yeah.
Totally count as issues.
So they do. In that, though, I don't know. I'm waffling here. They count as issues for as far as the company can tell for what, you know, how many readers are out there. They don't quite feel like issues to me because I'm not holding them. It's gonna sound really weird. I can't smell them. There's no tactile sensory. Oh man, I get a new book. I like open it up. I'm like, oh, book smell, my favorite. Or find like an old one. You know, like, oh, book from the '60s. Those, you know. Anyway, apart from being really weird right now, but the digital issues don't quite feel the same. But at the end of the day, I don't have another long box taking up space. I would, however, be going out and recommending, and I will go out and recommend this comic book to new readers and you know, to people who are like, oh, you know, I'm not a mainstream comic book fan. I'd say, well, then you should check out the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, because while it is Marvel, you're going to find this to be, you know, what you like.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be something that appeals directly to me, but having, you know, attended comic conventions in the '80s and gone to something nowadays, and you look around, one of the biggest differences is the gender, and it's at least half and half, if not, you know, there are more women at shows now than, you know, guys, which is just mind-blowing for somebody who, you know, did stuff back in, you know, 80s and 90s. They're finally putting stuff out that can appeal to that new young female audience. You know, because I don't know that. Yeah, okay, you put out an X-Men book that's all women. Great, but as you were saying earlier, it's like, yeah, but is that really appealing to women, or is it just, you know,
Yeah.
a guy book that's just all the hot chicks in their skimpy outfits?
Yeah.
So, you know, whereas this one really feels like, yeah, this is going to appeal to a female audience that doesn't take the whole superhero genre super uber serious. You know, somebody who enjoyed Guardians, you know, they might have found, you know, the Cap to be, but they really like Guardians because it's a sort of a superhero-y thing, but it's lighthearted, it's fun, and it plays with itself. You know, great
It's like
book.
a bridge.
Yeah.
It's a bridge between younger readers and older readers. It's a bridge between people who don't read comics and who want to get into it. It's a bridge between superhero and non-superhero stuff, and it's just really great. So this is one I would feel really comfortable recommending to a wider group of people.
Absolutely.
I will have to double check with him. I know my son, who's just about to turn 11, read this earlier, but I didn't actually get to sit with him and say, so, what
I would be interested to know what he thought.
Sorry?
Sorry, Chris. I was going to say I would be interested to know what he thought of a comic like this.
Well, I mean, he's a huge fan of, you know, Rainier Telgemeier, and has even read the Babysitter Club stuff, so it's not like, you know, the girl aspect of it.
Yeah.
It'll just be interesting to see what you know, it's like, would you read more of this? I will double check with him.
Nice. And getting back to Snow, would you guys recommend this to your friends? Like, did you really enjoy it? Would you put your backing behind it?
It's an easy one to recommend to people, especially, you know, that are in the GTA, you know, especially somebody who likes a film of that style, or, you know, shows of that, you know, anybody who likes, you know, an urban coming of age, blah blah blah, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's an easy one to hand to somebody who's maybe not a big comic reader. It would be the sort of thing I would include in a stack with Lucy Knisley stuff. You know, that's about life. Adrian Tomane without the snobbery, the pretension. I don't know. Just, it's a very similar kind of feel. It just, I love Tomane's art, but it just never got into his stories. Whereas this one's a little more approachable.
I would be a bit more selective, I think, in who I'd recommend it to, and not because I, you know, think it's a bad book in any way, but I would say it's got a bit more of a, you know, directed appeal, and I don't know, you know, if people who are, say, really heavily into the superhero comic books wouldn't necessarily enjoy it as much, and I would say, you know, Alice, if I ran into you and I didn't, you know, I knew you didn't know it already, I would have totally been like, oh, you should check out Snow. But I don't know if it would be the right book for everybody. I mean, they should give it a read for sure. But if you know, you're trying to either hook in a reader or you know, really obviously want someone to always enjoy what they're reading, I think I'd be a little more pick and choosy.
Cool. So at this point, I just want to wrap up, and I also want to talk to the audience a bit, because I have just a couple questions. Did you like this format? Reason I wanted to do this book club over Google Hangouts is I want you guys to join in on this book club. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, as long as, you know, you got a camera and the microphone, and you just like contact Quintessential Comics over Google+. We'll just need to do a quick test beforehand. But yeah, I want you guys to join the book club. So we're doing it like this, from Google Hangouts, and you can join from the comfort of your own home. So that's number one. Did you like this format? 2, do you like the format of having an issue and a graphic novel? I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with this, but I'd like your opinions anyway. 3, we're doing this right now on Tuesday nights. Are Tuesday nights good for you? I can also do Thursdays. I was thinking about Thursdays because it's after Wednesday, which is new comic book day. So if there is a month where the comic we are reading comes on the last Wednesday of the month, we'll still have the last Thursday to record, which is what I'm planning on doing. It's either the last Tuesday or the last Thursday. So let me know what you think about that. That's all the questions I have for you guys. What I will tell you is what we are reading next month. Next month, we are reading Infinite Kung Fu by Kagan MacLeod.
Oh, I like that. I haven't actually read it though, which is good. I've always wanted to. Sorry to interrupt, Alice.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things one of the reasons I picked it is I picked it up a couple times, but it's like it's a heavy book. It's pretty hefty. So like I never really was able to like fully commit and get in, and I was like, yo, put it in the book club. In addition to Infinite Kung Fu, we're also going to be checking out the new first issue of Spider-Gwen, also from Marvel.
Cool.
For the issue part, I'm always going to try to do a first issue so we can feel like we're jumping in from the beginning. Because also Marvel and DC and all the publishers in general are generally doing a lot of first issues. It makes it...
I was about to say, sorry to interrupt again, Alice, but yeah, like I mean, these days almost every title gets rebooted somewhere around issue 12, so we'll have plenty of issue 1s. I mean, we could be doing Batman and Superman, and I'm teasing, but you are right. And I'm looking forward to those are some great picks. I realize I'm revealing that I'm only discovering this now, but I'm really, really excited for what we're going to be talking about next month.
Yeah, and you could totally join in again. There's no limit. As long I'm gonna try to keep it to like 4 people, and if like we have an influx of people, you might get booted, but you're totally invited.
Oh, I'm already kicked off the island. All right, well that's fine.
So yeah, that's for next month, and because of the way that comic shops work, and because of the comic book industry, I'm also going to announce the book club picks for the month afterwards, because you might have to put in your order with Diamond, who does the distribution for comic book issues, and some people, they really like it in advance, like the comic book shops, they're like, yo, we want to know how much to order, so that way they're not short. Alright, so for the third month, which is March, we're going to be doing Howard the Duck, because it's going to be awesome. I'm already super excited for it. It's 2 months away. I guess I'll just announce the other graphic novel. If you guys finish Infinite Kung Fu, you can also start Hip Hop Family Tree Volume 1. It's awesome. It's the history of hip hop in an amazing comic book. Another one I've been meaning to read fully, and now I'm putting it in the book club because that's how I'm gonna read things from now on. Because if it's not on my e-reader and I can't like fit it in my purse, it won't go with me because there's snow outside and it'll get wet and gross and things. So I want to thank all of the viewers for tuning in today, whether they be viewing in live, which is super awesome, or watching after on YouTube. And I want to thank both you, Chris, and Andrew Ace. And I would like to present to you these super cool QCX tote bags, which I will mail
Yay!
for participating. Yeah, swag for you guys. You guys who are so freaking cool for joining me on my first ever episode. I think it's gone super cool so far, so I'll get your addresses or I'll meet up with you guys and give you these super cool tote bags. For now, I'm Alice Quinn. You can follow Quintessential Comics on YouTube. You could add us into your circles on Google+, and that way I can invite you to these book club live events before they happen. Would you guys like to plug some of your stuff? Chris?
I ran away trying to grab something.
All right, Ace?
I am on Twitter at UYS999, and basically you'll find me on every social medium. The whole trick to my whole thing is that my last name is Ace, but it's spelled UYS. I also make comic books, and I would tell you about them, but if you can actually find me online, you'll find links to that like, nobody's business. So, Chris, what are you going to show us?
Ace, so cool. Chris, you got it?
Nothing, because I've just been tearing this place apart and I cannot get my hands on a book right now, which is more terrible and sad. Dress for Success. Look for Augusta Comics. You'll find us. EGESTA. As Alice searches on her bookshelf.
It's in my issue box, so it's not really readily accessible. I'm actually like pushed up against my bookshelf here. I'm like caged in, so there's no. It looks really good on camera. There's no way I can really get to that book right now.
Are you guys on Instagram?
No.
I'm on Instagram as the Alice Quinn. The Quintessential Comics is on YouTube as Quintessential Comics, as on Twitter as QCX Show. The hashtag is QCX because Quintessential Comics is spelled with 2 N's in Quintessential and an X in Comics because I like making it harder for you guys. And I'm just the Alice Quinn on everything else, and you can find my portfolio website, thealicequinn.com.
Cool. Well, guys, I got to get going, so I'm going to sign off with Queen's sort of type wave and a cheerio. Alice, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me along tonight.
Thanks for coming, and thanks all of you guys for tuning in. I look forward to hearing your comments and to seeing you guys next month. Okay, bye!